adoratio, Jeremia prophet.
Hello, and welcome again to The Reason for a Season, a media project of the Irish Dominican province. In this episode, we'll be looking at the Easter Triduum, 3 momentous days that mark the very high point of the liturgical year. With Lent ending after 40 days of prayer, fasting and almsgiving, we are ready to walk with Jesus to the Mount of Olives, to the upper room, to the Sanhedrin, to Pilate, and finally to Golgotha. As he descends to the depths of human reality, we wait by his tomb in silence, and we rejoice in his victory over death. During this Easter Triduum, we enter into the darkness with the suffering Christ, knowing well that the light of the world will overcome even that darkness. The Triduum begins on the evening of Holy Thursday, at the evening Mass of the Lord's Supper. The mood of this celebration is solemn, but joyful too. It is the day when we recall the Last Supper, when Jesus took bread and said, "This is my body," and took the cup and said, "This is my blood." It is at this moment that he commands the apostles, the very first priests, to do this in his memory, to celebrate the Eucharist. We also recall, during the Gospel reading, and later reenact, the washing of the apostles' feet by Jesus. Jesus himself explains the significance of this deeply personal event. "If I, the Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you should wash each other's feet. I have given you an example, so that you may copy what I have done to you." After the washing of the feet, the Mass continues as normal, until the end of the communion rite, when the priest carries the Blessed Sacrament to the altar of repose, on a side altar or a separate room or chapel. The tabernacle is now empty. The door is left open. After Mass, unless they have been veiled already, all statues and crosses are veiled with a purple cloth. All this has the purpose of removing the comfort of images and the consoling presence of Christ. Having celebrated the Last Supper with joy, we now enter into the desolation of Christ's suffering. During Holy Thursday night, many people keep vigil at the altar of repose, as a way of being present in a special way with Christ during his agony, when he asked his disciples in the garden to stay with him. The hour has come. Now the Son of Man is to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. When we come to the church on Good Friday, at 3 o'clock, the very moment of Christ's death, we will find the altar completely bare, with no cloth, candles or cross. Everything is stripped down. All images are veiled. On this day we recall Christ's suffering, his passion. We recall the details of his passion, not out of a morbid interest, but because we understand his anguish to be a sign of love for us. And so, Good Friday calls out a response in us of compassion and love for our suffering Lord. During this liturgical service, which is not a Mass, we hear Isaiah's prophecy of the suffering servant. "On him lies a punishment that brings us peace, and through his wounds we are healed." After we hear the Passion account from St. John's Gospel, we move to the second part of the ceremony, the veneration of the cross. This is an opportunity for us to show our compassion for Christ by means of a simple personal action, kissing or touching the crucifix. This is a powerfully emotional event when people of all ages, races and backgrounds process to the cross to venerate their Saviour. Although no Mass takes place on Good Friday, a rite of communion does take place, where the faithful may receive the true body and true blood of Christ, given up for them. Holy Saturday is the day when the whole church waits at the Lord's tomb. It is an empty day. There is no liturgical gathering in the morning. All our long journeying with Christ during Lent and the Triduum seems wasted. The bridegroom is departed. It is on this day we think of the Mother of Christ, grieving, suffering, but still perhaps hoping. We make the words of the psalm our own. Will your love be told in the grave, or your faithfulness among the dead? Will your wonders be known in the dark cup, or your justice in the land of oblivion? It is in this spirit of emptiness that the church gathers in the black of Holy Saturday night. But we find something entirely different from our emptiness. Something warm, bright, lively, a fire. The Paschal fire is the light of Christ's resurrection, scattering the darkness of despair. It is from this fire that the Paschal candle is lit, and from the Paschal candle, each Christian present lights their own candle, the fire of the resurrection warming each one. The light of Christ has come into the world. We move into the church, carrying with us the light of the resurrection fire. And there we hear a song so welcome after that long Lent, the Exultet. Rejoice, heavenly powers, sing choirs of angels, exult, all creation around God's throne. Jesus Christ, our King, is risen. Sound the trumpet of salvation. We hear the refrain, this is the night, each time recalling the saving acts of God, first in the Old Covenant and then in Jesus Christ. This is the night when Jesus Christ broke the chains of death and rose triumphant from the grave. Having cast off our mantle of mourning, we hear again the story of our salvation, beginning way back with creation, taking in Abraham, Moses, and Noah, the prophecies of Isaiah, Baruch, and Ezekiel, and finally we hear the words of the gospel. He is not here, for he has risen as he said he would. The time of fasting is over, and the feasting begins. We sing, Alleluia. We return to eating and drinking, all those things from which we had fasted. The great news, though, is that the party doesn't finish on Holy Saturday night. Far from it. Eastertide lasts 50 days. That's 10 days longer than Lent. For 50 days we recall again and again, with joy, that Christ is risen.